everyone, and welcome to Pod TV's #1 do it yourself advocate show, Timeshare Solution or Surrender. We are at episode 59 this week. Oh my God, I cannot believe it. And we've had so much success. But most of our shows are about people who have had bad experiences with their timeshares or their timeshare exit companies. But sometimes we actually have good stories to tell. Not every story is about the deceptive acts, but every story needs to be taken and looked at independently. And that's what Irene does. She takes a look at everyone's story and helps everyone who comes to her. And she will help them determine, hey, you know what? Maybe there's another way you could use this. But Irene, can you believe it? 59 episodes.
I
And
know.
you've got a good outcome this week. How many people have you helped so far this week or resolved?
Well, we have heard from, since January 1, 247 families since January 1. So I don't know how many this past week, but we did. Before each show, I do an outline and I send that outline to the guests so they can know each other's situation. And I had to cross out that 6 resolutions and change it to 7 because about 10 minutes before the show, someone said that they reached out. So it's always good to associate a name with a face. So when we have 7 resolutions, we've introduced you to resolution number 6. Eric, you're in Maine, correct?
Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts, close. Okay, Massachusetts. I talked to someone else from Maine. That's how I got. And we have on the show today your neighbor Sheila in New York, not too far from you. And yep, and we have she is here about Club Exploria. And we have another guest that's going to be popping in hopefully at 1:10 because she is at work and she is disputing Club Exploria as well. But before we get started today, I'd like to just go over how these resolutions came about. Family number, next week we have someone disputing Sell My Timeshare Now. So if you call a licensed broker and you have a $10,000 loan, they will not even accept the listing. They'll say it's not worth your time or mine, and they don't charge an upfront fee. But if you call Sell My Timeshare Now or Timeshares Only, they will say, oh, sure. Well, Melissa, Hilton Grand Vacations offered to buy her timeshare back for $8,000. And Sheila, you would have jumped at the chance of somebody would have offered that. But because she had no experience in these things and she's thinking it's like a house, but I paid $40,000. And they said, no problem, just pay us $5,000 for a listing, and you should list it for $35,000. Well, that was January of 2024. So just this morning, we had someone that Sierra, she wants to be on the show too. She also paid Sell My Timeshare Now. So we're hoping. We have 2 goals here. One of them is to improve communication, which we have proven has happened with Eric and Judy and these other 6 resolutions, and also to promote a more viable and transparent secondary market, which is why we've had Koala and Volca launching My Resort Co-op on the show. But just to run down these resolutions before we hear Eric's story. The first one, they've received a cancer diagnosis, and in 10 years ago, they bought $14,000 worth of points. So the goal is to beat. Yeah, the goal is to beat up deed owners. Yeah, and get them to convert to points. So they told her when she talked about predatory, oh, well, you never signed the right paperwork to change that deed back. So you owe $1,800 in back maintenance fees, and you have to pay that today unless you buy more points. So fortunately, she had, I think, a son-in-law or something in the family that was an attorney, and when she got home, they weren't, no way, and she was able to rescind that, but the resort charges a hefty fee to take it back, and she was able to convince them to take it back. And again, we're volunteers, but we have defray website cost. We have, some other administrative things. So we do ask for donations. Nobody's hounded for donations, but we hope that people remember us. The next resolution, number 2, was really remarkable because it was Mexico. And Eric, you brought up when we were talking before the show about the couple that was arrested in Mexico. Yes, and they had paid $117,000 3 years ago. Amex refunded it, and then they've been to Mexico a couple times. He's a Navy veteran of 21 years, and they were arrested and put in a maximum security prison. So we talked about it last week, so we want to update it that they have been released, but oddly enough, they were a little bit guilty. So the resort was demanding $250,000 plus an NDA and a public apology. And the Michigan congressman flew down there and negotiated their release for $116,000 to be donated to a nonprofit that helps orphans, because apparently they had rented out their units and the revenue was $250,000. But in Tarda's March newsletter, we had an update from an attorney that said, the difference is it would be a civil dispute in the United States. So law enforcement would never be involved. But anyway, that's a happy ending. But this is a Mexico timeshare. And even though this is a pretty slimy timeshare, if a company is willing to work with the members, we don't want to say their name. But what they had is they had a WhatsApp messenger, and they had pictures of alcohol being served. So in Mexico, apparently that is not allowed. And also they were California residents, and they referenced that that in California you need spousal consent. I guess community property or something. The third resolution was simple. It took overnight, well, maybe a week, I think, but they reached out. We referred them to the Westgate Legacy Department. They had a 1-bedroom something or other, and Westgate agreed to take it back. Hey, I think we have our employee here. Okay. Raquel, can you hear us? Hi.
Oh, it's hot in here.
Okay, Raquel, can you hear us? It's live TV, so we never know what's going to happen. Okay. Well, I will keep talking. Raquel, surely she can see us. Okay. We can't, let me, okay. Let me call Raquel. You never know what's going to happen here. Hey, Raquel.
So Eric, where are you in Massachusetts about?
I'm in the western end, in the Springfield area.
Okay.
Where are you in New York?
Okay. So you're not very far. Just outside of Albany, in Troy.
Oh, no kidding. All right.
So it takes us
near.
about about 2 hours. Yeah. I get up there every once in a while just to go to Costco.
Oh.
So
I got one right down the street from me.
yeah, not far at all.
No, not at all.
Okay, well, listen, let's see. I think she's going to try to go back out and come back in again, but I'll keep going with my Westgate resolution. And here, let me see. Okay, are you there?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what happened. I was just like, let me just get out and then go back in, and that worked.
Yeah, and this is live TV, and I've learned to accept
Still
the fact
spinning,
we
Irene.
never know what is going to happen on this
Yeah.
show. So we had a lot of construction, and at
There
least
she
that's
is.
out
There
of the
she
way.
is.
Yeah, so I know you don't have, I've already, I went up to 3 resolutions, so we're going to hold off the next 3. We were going to start with Eric, but I know you only have about 15 minutes here, so we're going to start with you. Now, there have been, Exploria has allowed a couple people out, but for some
Oh, nice.
reason, yeah, they're allowing Sheila. Sheila has they've never, I'm not aware of them. Well, yes, Sheila, we did have one person that had a loan that they canceled their loan. It was some kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
You,
Yes.
Sheila doesn't have a loan, but she just has some medical challenges that she really can't stay there anymore, and they're still refusing to take it back. Now, Kimberly
Wow.
is going to play a short, it's under 2-minute clip about the North Carolina Attorney General suing Club Exploria for making illegal robocalls. So after you finish sharing your story, and you've never bought a timeshare before, correct?
No, I hadn't.
Okay, well, you're with some old folks here, for sure, Sheila and I that have owned timeshares for decades and decades, and you specifically wanted to go to Aruba. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, how did you end up at a presentation?
Yeah. Well, so we, it was around, I want to say it was around the holidays. So there's like a mall, like 45 minutes away from us. So, like every once in a while, we'll go there, whatever. They had like I guess like a little kiosk thing. I wasn't even there when my husband signed us up for like some free, I don't know, like a free, I think it was like a free one night something, and then like they gave you like a free water park or free thing to go to Florida. I don't know, it was, so he like paid, I forget how much, I think like 150 or something. So then he like scheduled that, so we went there, and then like, I mean, that's how, like, so in order for you to get the free incentives, I guess you have to do the presentation. So that's how I ended up going there.
And what did you, I have what you bought here. You bought 234, 230, I believe they call them.
230.
Yeah, for 17,000, and you financed $15,996 at almost 17%. And
Right.
that was in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Pocono Mountains. Okay,
Yep,
so
it
that
was in
was in,
Villas.
okay, so you just purchased this in 2025.
Just.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, did you specifically mention that you only wanted to go to Aruba and a few other places? Uh-oh. Can you
Sorry.
hear me? Oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no. So I was saying that, like, yeah. So when we went to the presentation, we met with a John there, and we kind of told him, like they kind of give you a spiel. They tell you, like you can go here, you can go there, whatever. And we were like, listen, like we like to go to Cancun, we like to go to Aruba. We're a family of 4. They make you bring your family with you. So like we were there with my 2 younger, with my 2 little kids. And so like we told him like this is where we want to go. I told him, I was specifically looking into going, actually this coming up week. I had wanted us to go to, whether it be like like whether it be Aruba or to Cancun, or even like at the end of May, we wanted to go to one of those places, and I already had prices. So I had already told him, it was going to be about $7,000 for us to do that. So, like he kind of, convinced me, tricked me. I don't even know like what the word would be to do it, because like he showed it to me, and he was like, oh, well, instead of you, paying that $7,000 for one vacation, why don't you invest in your family's vacations and, got signed up with this timeshare, so then you can put that money towards, going on vacations for the future. So, I mean, that's pretty much like how I got suckered into it, because like, I mean, he showed it to me on his computer. Like he showed me the place, he showed me the days, like I checked in April, I checked in, at the end of May, like we wanted to, and like those places were there and they could accommodate us.
So, Sheila, since you've been how long have you owned Club Exploria? And what I explained is
Uh,
if somebody's never bought a timeshare before, sometimes getting high demand, high locations like that is pretty hard. Have you had any luck, Sheila, booking anything like that? High locations like that is pretty hard. Have you had
everybody keeps,
booking anything like that? Yeah, I seem to be echoing now.
okay. I don't know what your question was, Irene. Everybody keeps getting cut out.
Okay, I said since you've
Yeah,
owned with Club Exploria for many, many years, have you had any
yeah.
luck booking high desirable locations like that?
No, I've not. And actually, I didn't know Club Exploria had anything in Aruba or Mexico. Is it a Club Exploria that you tried to get,
Well, so like
Raquel?
that's the thing. So I guess, yeah, so I guess when he showed it to me, he told me that it was like with the Club Exploria, I could use my expos and everything would be great. The only thing I would have to pay for were my flights. So come to, being past the rescission period, once they gave me access to the booking site, going like, 2 weeks after I had already signed, so past the time that I could, cancel, that's when like I went in and I saw that like the places that he told me and he showed me weren't even there. And then what was worse was that,
Yeah.
every room could only accommodate 2 people. And we're a family of 4. So like I was telling Irene, I'm like, so what am I supposed to do? Book 2 rooms, stay me with my 3-year-old and my husband with my 9-year-old, or like vice versa? Like how can that be it? And then one of the ladies, more towards like when I kept calling and telling them like, hey, like I'm not finding what they showed me in the presentation, can you guys help me? Like maybe I'm just, like dumb and I can't find it, you know. And then that's when they were like, oh no, we don't do that from here, like you can go through like I guess the RCI or something. And I was just like, well, of course I can pay
Mm-hmm.
extra money to go wherever I want. That wasn't the point of me getting the timeshare. I'm like, the point of me signing up with Explorer was so that I could do it with said points, not having to pay anything like
Yeah,
extra on top of it.
And Sheila,
right.
have you used RCI to make exchanges very much?
I have with Vacation Village, well, Massanutten, and they have their own timeshare RCI site, and I use that all the time when I want to use someplace out of the Vacation Village or whatever. Actually, the only thing I ever use in Vacation Village is Massanutten. But
Okay.
with Exploria, they have very little of their own timeshares. Most of them are affiliated. So
So
it's
they
hard to
don't
get
own
them.
them. Yeah,
And
they just
even
have some.
with, no, no,
So they just have a booking
yeah.
arrangement with those.
So affiliated ones, most of the times you have to call up. Yeah. Yeah. So you have a hard time getting any of those. So I
Now,
don't even bother with them.
your Sheila and
Unfortunately, you
Raquel,
still owe, yeah,
yeah, she has a loan, and you're both New Yorkers. Okay, and I
yeah,
believe you both have accounting backgrounds. Raquel, before you go, Sheila is our go-to since tomorrow is April 15th, and the cobbler's kids having the worst shoes. Sheila is like frantically trying to do her own taxes now. But if they would forgive your loan,
yeah,
you could receive a 1099-C, standing for cancellation, or 1099-A for abandonment. So even though this timeshare that you might have paid $20,000 for is worth nothing to you, if they forgive your
Right.
loan, you get a tax bill for loan forgiveness, which doesn't make any sense. So are you
Right.
familiar with the 1099-C?
I have, I mean, because like I use the charta.org and everything. And like even before, like I Googled stuff and everything. So I do know that, yeah, like, I mean, I like honestly, like at this point, like I wouldn't even mind one of those because like, like we do have an accountant and stuff. And like, I have, heard and read that, you can, have them kind of like adjust it to the point so that they realize like, I have no physical property. Like You know what I mean? Like, even though it's
You're
listed as a
you're not
mortgage, it's
enriched.
nothing of
Yeah,
mine.
you're not
Yeah,
enriched by the
so
loan forgiveness. So we've had it disputed
right,
in every case. Yeah. So just
yeah.
wanted to mention that before you
Yeah.
leave. So have you made any loan payments at
Yeah.
all yet, Raquel?
No, I haven't. They keep calling me, and then sometimes some of the financial people are like, some of them are, okay, nice. Some of them kind of like, I don't know, they act as if like I owe them money, and they get, like very rude and everything. But no, I haven't, and I keep telling them that I'm not going to pay it, because if I do, I know that they're really not going to help me in getting what I want, which is to like pretend that this never even happened to me.
Well, and what we're trying to
Yeah.
convince regulators and lawmakers is that reading the contract wouldn't have helped you because you didn't have access
No,
to the booking site.
right.
And so that's what they always say. You should have read your contract. You had 10 days to cancel.
Yeah,
It wouldn't have helped.
right.
Now, and then
Yeah, I know.
I told you, I always, when someone is in default, I always tell my Homeland Security guy story where the agent would call him at work and he'd say, I'm so glad you called, which nobody would tell a collection agent that. And then he would
Right.
try to keep the collection agent on the phone as long as he possibly could with all this data. And then one time he said, I had a bad day at work, so I sent the executives 50 tweets. And so it's kind of like turning the predator into the prey. You left me with
Yeah.
no choice in this matter.
Right.
And
No, yeah.
and these exit companies will say, well, pay us, we'll get you out of your timeshare or your money back. Well, then what? You need support during that default process. And Sheila, before Raquel has to leave, you have prepared a document that you have sent to, do you have a
Yeah.
list of those organizations that you sent your concerns to?
I do. And I do. And I know Raquel has to go back to work, and this not very good. Everybody keeps cutting out. I don't know if you can hear it on your side, but the screen will
Yeah,
go black too. So Raquel, I
I
first
can
want
hear
to
you now.
apologize. I think Irene sent me your name for me to call you when I was in Florida. Okay. And I had so many texts and everything. I lost it and I couldn't find it. But I do want to apologize. I was so busy down there working too. And
Yeah,
I
no
would
worries.
like to talk to you and get back to you and tell you what you can do and everything. It may help, it may
Sure.
not, but you got to
Yeah.
work for yourself too, you know?
Yeah, no,
So
yeah, yeah.
I think I don't, yeah, I think if you send me a message, I'm on this list for this podcast. So send me something and then we'll get together in a week or so. I just got back from Florida and I'm trying to get my taxes done today.
Do you
So,
have the
okay,
list
I
of
do want to help you.
do you have the list of all the organizations you've reached
I
out to,
do. I
Sheila?
have,
Can you
I
run
do.
down them?
Yeah. New York State, because you're in New York State Tax Department, Audit Division of Income and Franchise Department. And that's at the Harlem campus and all. The Orlando, Florida Better Business Bureau, Exploria Resorts,
Of
and
course.
Exploria Homeowners Association down in Florida. Yeah. And Arta Rock. And this when it went to Washington, D.C. But I received a response from Florida. So, and the Attorney General in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the Federal Trade Commission and Fraud, FTC.gov. And let's see, the Florida Attorney General. That's the
So
one
that's all you have
that
to
I've
do for
sent to so
homework.
far.
Yeah, and then we
You
have a
guys there?
support group. Yeah, we
Whoa.
don't. It was recommended that we start a Facebook group supporting those in your situation, and they always word these things to make it sound like they're going to take your house and your firstborn child away from you. So when you get that to help leverage our time, do you have you? So you're just getting phone calls right now. You haven't received anything in the mail for demanding payment?
Yeah, no, just the normal, like, I mean, I've gotten a couple from them just saying, like I'm late and stuff and for me to make payment, but I haven't received anything from like any sort of like collection agency or anything like that, just from them so far. Because I wasn't even though I signed in January, they like pushed out my first payment to be like March 21st. So, so I'm just like kind of late now. But I mean, they
You're
call me like every
not on
day.
an automatic payment plan.
I was, but
You're
I
not on
canceled
an
my,
automatic
well, I
payment
didn't
with
cancel my
them, right?
card. I changed my credit card number.
Okay.
You changed
Yeah.
it to your credit card?
No,
No,
so
she.
it was
Okay.
set to be taken from my credit card. And then when
Oh,
when
okay.
I tried to get my deposit back, they like the credit card charged it back to me because, Exploria sent them proof that I had signed it and everything. So, unfortunately, like that's as far as that dispute went for me in that sense. And then since, like when I sent that, I pretty much like I canceled. Well, I didn't cancel my card, but I got a new card number so they don't have access to my funds.
Did you dispute the down payment on the credit card?
I did, but they Exploria sent them,
Okay.
that I kind of
Good.
like
No, no,
signed
no.
off on the contract and stuff.
No. You have to do a rebuttal and say that signing the contract did not protect you and the rescission period did not protect you. And then Kim's sister has been on the show. If your credit score can go down 200 points. And so Kim's sister recommended that you challenge the reporting of it as a mortgage because the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in Steins versus Westgate that a timeshare loan is not a mortgage. And according to Kelly with Motivation Mortgage, that it's a much less effect on your credit score if it's consumer credit instead of an actual mortgage. Fannie Mae on their website has says it's not a mortgage, even if it's reported that way. The NCUA, the National
Okay.
Credit Union Association, they have a footnote that says excludes timeshares from but the developers, we're going to talk to Eric in a bit. He's a Marine veteran. So our concern is the volume. I've heard from, I'd say it was about at least 22 people since January 1 that have active duty security clearances with their security clearances in jeopardy. So people that work in lending, they have to be really, really careful. Kim, before she goes, do you have time to play that? Do you have that 2-minute
I do.
recording?
And that's something I'm going to tell people in North Carolina. They won't go after a timeshare for scamming you or misrepresenting the oil representation, but they will go after them for making a robocall to you. So we're going to, right? So if you word your complaint right and start it out with, "Oh, call me by robocall," then all of this scam happened. He might go after them, but it just
Oh, but he
irritates me.
said,
But
Kim, he said on the little short clip I gave
we're
you
gonna play
that
it.
in addition to I didn't catch this the first 2 times, but he said in addition to illegal robocalls, we have received a dozen Club Exploria complaints about their practices. That would be
And one and
Raquel
one
and Sheila.
and one hidden because he turned it away. But hold on just a minute and we'll play it. And I just want people to know that that yeah, I think it's just die hard due diligence. But let's get this play. Hold on.
Announcement from State Attorney General and Democratic candidate for Governor Josh Stein about robocalls.
Moments ago, he unveiled a new lawsuit against calls. Tamara Scott joins us live. She has the details on this. Tamara?
Hey, good morning, guys. Yeah, the Attorney General's office announced that he and the department are going to be suing Club Exploria, which is a timeshare company that they say is spamming more in North Carolina. Carolinians. So this is the latest step that he has taken, and legal actions to protect people from illegal robocalls that can lead to spamming people out of a lot of money. Now, he went on to say that the Attorney General's office received about a dozen complaints about Explorer and is asking the court ban from making calls and required companies to announce he issued 2 demands into possible robocalls or texts. A divided telemarketing law by 65 million in China and those numbers in North Carolina. So he says this is a long road and offers advice to people to protect themselves. Take a listen.
We're going to do everything in our power here at the Department of Justice to stop the companies and telemarketers from violating our laws and stealing is desperate in need of help. And they ask you for money, hang up the phone and call Joey's number that you know to be Joey's number.
Now, in North Carolina, businesses that solicit over the phone must get consent before robocalling them. The Attorney General says Florida allegedly failed to do so for those calls. We are reaching out to those companies and are waiting for comment. Back to you.
Well, and I read the complaint and what people, you have to identify yourself when you do robocalls. And so the script was AI. Hi, I'm TripAdvisor. I'm with Helping Hands. I looked them up. They claim to be an organization that helps orphans. And all you have to do is stay at this beautiful Club Exploria resort and let us know what a great time you had. And Club Exploria's response to that was, we are of the highest integrity. But obviously, we're not hearing that from Raquel. So, Raquel, I don't know when you're going to have to leave us now. I'm going to continue on with the.
I have to get back, but thank you so much. I'm sorry I can't stay any longer.
No,
I'm definitely
thanks
gonna
for being
watch
with
the.
us.
I'm definitely gonna watch
But
it
it's your
once it's
story.
uploaded.
Your story helps us
Yeah,
build the
give me a
story
call.
we need, right? So we just have to unite, people helping people get
Yeah.
these resolutions done, and we just have to stick together. So hang in there.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Have a
Okay.
good one, guys.
Thank you, Raquel.
Irene, it's
Bye.
always good to hear all, but there's this consistent story that just keeps going, and it just seems unreal to me that nobody is putting a stop to some of the misrepresentations of the oral representations.
Yeah, and the money that's being paid to exit companies really that is unnecessary. If we can transmit what we know about composing reports, in some sort of teaching process. But in the case of Westgate Legacy, if that person had called an exit company, they would have charged $4,000 or $5,000 when this Westgate has been known to pick and choose. Then we also had a prior guest, Claire was on our show. She's a widow and she fell for the rental pitch. And she just today heard that they are considering, she's not all the way through the process, but they're going to take it back. Then we had Don in California. I got a message that said, God got me out of my timeshare. And I'm like, well, first of all, we don't like to say get you out of your timeshare. We like to say dispute resolution. Words matter.
There you go.
He disputed 3 credit cards, and because they did refund it, and I said, we don't want to take any credit from God, but it could have been because you were within 24 hours of the rescind period that they agreed to do that. And then number 7, we're saving Eric for number 6, but number 7 was someone that resolved their Hilton dispute. And this lady can write circles around me. Let me tell you, when I read the report that she sent,
I don't know. Is it just me that's everything's cutting out?
No, this time she froze. We'll have to take a look at that. But the thing that people need to understand is that there is a rescind period, right? And in that period, you need to get your, application to rescind filed. But it's not just the period that's important. You can't contact the people that sold it to you and tell them, I don't want this anymore. That's not where you rescind. You have to look in your contract and all of the 80 pages of the contract to find out where do you send the complaint to. And it's not easily written out. It is not easily documented. Here are the steps to rescind. So, but you generally, some places only have 3 days. When I was in my sale, I had 3 days, and I met them my first day on vacation. Of course, we know the story. I was highly intoxicated. But by the time I got done with my vacation, the rescind period was over.
No.
And I think that is wrong. Right? So, I mean, but I spoke with a friend of mine. Her and her husband got lured in many, many years ago. And they were both, highly well employed. And they went on this super nice vacation on one of these timeshare things, and they got convinced to buy. And when they got home, so I don't know what the rescind period was back then, but when they got home, he lost his job. And so she says, well, crap, we can't afford this because it was a huge layoff. So they knew that it was going to be a while before anyone got a job. So she went real quick to rescind, and she said, I remember it being very difficult to find it in the paperwork. She said, I called them first and they gave me oh, you don't want to rescind. We'll do this. We'll do that. She goes, no, I want out. I want out. I don't know when we're going to get a job, and I can't afford everything now. So she had to go through the paperwork, and she got the paper done in time and sent to them. But when you call the people who sold it to you, they're not going to give you the right instructions for rescinding to begin with. Because when I called them and talked to them, they didn't. So in fact, they told me I could sell it whenever I wanted to. So, or that they would buy it back anytime I wanted them to. So, hi, Irene, can we hear you now?
Yeah, so I'm glad that.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so Eric,
there we go.
Tell us your journey with Marriott,
Your
and I just want to give Marriott a commercial that I call them the kinder, gentler timeshare company, because even defaulting on loans, they just seem to have a little bit more compassion. How long have you owned at Harborside? We get a lot of people calling about Harborside, and what made you want to be released?
We've been owners since 2010. At first it was Starwood, and then it was Vistana, and now it's transitioning to Marriott. And we were Harborside owners from the beginning. And at first we used it exactly as we had hoped. It was wonderful. We took our kids there. We had great vacations. But then as the kids got older and started to go out on their own, and we got into our golden years, where it turns out you need a lot of gold to pay for your medical necessities during those years, we just ended up with so many medical bills that we couldn't afford it anymore. So we started to look into trying to get out of it, and there was no exit strategy. We didn't have a phone number. We wrote to them, and they wrote back to say there is no exit strategy. So we ended up at a Marriott presentation last year at a resort. We went to in Florida. My 90-minute presentation turned out to be 5 hours. And at the end of the 5th hour, the people in charge came into the room with a somber look on their face, and they're saying, because we were actually ready to sign. We were going to sign up with Marriott for points. And he said, we can't do it. I won't use the words I used that day to express my displeasure, but I was very, very aghast. And he said the Bahamian laws won't allow us to do it. So now my wife.
Why
looked at
not? Why did they explain why?
No, they did not. They just said that because our timeshare was in Bahamian property, the Bahamian laws would not allow us to exit it. And that was never disclosed to us when we first came on board. No exit strategy or option was ever made available when we first came on board. So we felt like we were stuck, our hands were tied. So my wife was very good at research, did a lot of research. She ended up finding TARDA. And as I had said to you, Irene, earlier, she contacted an organization, ARDA, and the person on the phone said, "Oh, you don't want to talk to us. You want to talk to TARDA." Okay.
Sheila, did you hear that?
Yeah. So we
I
did.
heard it.
Yeah,
And
I was saying I was sitting down.
That's
but this
amazing
is
because I got my letter back and they said,
This is
So-
like we're like a free ombudsman program for, and we're trying to improve communication. So maybe
Yeah.
we're making some headways. So go ahead. I just wanted to say, thank you.
Oh, you bet. So we got hold of you, and Irene, you were so instrumental in helping us put our words together, to be tenacious, to not give up, just to keep moving forward, and to use the proper language. And when we explained to them all of our medical issues and bills we're currently experiencing, we could no longer afford this. Plus, in the last 4 to 5 years, the maintenance fees have increased by 42%.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't viable anymore. So they actually got back to us, and I'm giving all the credit that I can to them on this situation. They were gracious enough to say, yes, we're going to give you an exception to the rule, and we're going to allow you to relinquish your timeshare. It's in process now. We have not had a complete resolution yet. We're in the 90 to 120 day window before everything is supposed to be all said and done.
And a lot of people will reach out and I'll say, do you have any medical hardship? And they'll say, yes. Did you tell them that? No. So I asked Judy, I said, do you mind if we share your medical conditions? No, we show people pictures. So
Yes, she does.
she has spinal stenosis, I believe. And yeah, so it's
She has
pretty hard to.
spinal stenosis, and she's had one spine procedure done successfully, thank goodness. She's due for another spinal procedure coming up soon. I personally have had 5 joints repaired and replaced over the past few years, and the medical bills for all those things add up. And that's what we're going through right now. So
And how long were you with the fire department?
I was with the fire department for 28 years. And before that, I was with the Marine Corps for 4 years. And another thing that just reminded me of that you mentioned, Irene, was the security clearance for some of our active duty service members. And that is a very, very critical situation. I remember clearly to this day all of the security clearance meetings that we had to go through and forms we had to fill out in order to be allowed to operate successfully for the United States military, depending upon your job description that you had with your particular branch of service. And you go through a lot to get that far, and to have something like a timeshare endanger your credibility with your superiors, that's extremely serious. That's a very serious event to have to go through, and it could affect your career.
It absolutely has. And we actually had Andrew, who served 9 years with the Idaho National Guard, and he was in the process of moving to the Utah National Guard to be close to his new wife and child. And Westgate had sold him a 4-bedroom and very detailed instructions on how he could rent it to make money, a young couple with a 6-year-old, forcing him to default. And that was one of the factors that it was involuntary separation from service. So what I've learned is that the regulators, and Sheila has heard judges with me, they don't understand timeshare, and they don't understand that reading the contract and the rescission period doesn't work. So, and then despite the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals that in Steins versus Westgate ruling that it's not a timeshare loan, it's not a mortgage loan, because the Military Lending Act exempts home mortgages. You have Fannie Mae saying it's not a mortgage, and I mentioned earlier NCUA. So, and yet still the developers are saying either we don't agree with it. Holiday Inn was the worst. They referred an active duty service members to timeshares only, and they lost another $1,000 taking out an ad when they had a loan on their timeshare. So, and you had mentioned also that you had mentioned the timeshare in your will.
Yes, my wife and I filled out some wills. We thought it would be the appropriate thing to do when our children were very little. And it came to me today that in our will is the decision to pass on the timeshare deeds to our children. Well, our children are old enough, they're adults now starting their own families. They don't want the timeshares. So I am going to have to dig those out and go with my wife and get with an attorney to have these wills amended to have that clause removed.
Right, and every state is different, so the heirs just need to be aware of the timeshares. So within a period of time, I know in New York, it's 9 months from the date of death that you an heir can disclaim an inheritance. And I think the worst is Vacation Village, where they were just acquired by Vacatia. I've heard different people pronouncing it different. They acquired Vacation Village, Great Eastern, managed by DM Management. And so we have so many complaints where they will not allow an exit. They say they allow it under certain medical circumstances. There was a news report where the husband or the wife had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And they, until a television reporter got involved, they were denied a release because they had rented it out in 2024 instead of just saying wait till 2025 and reapply. So it's like, I don't think any of us would have bought a timeshare 10, 20, 30 years ago if we had known what a headache it is on the end game of these timeshares. So and you didn't have to file any complaints with any attorney generals or anything with your interactions with Marriott. So we're just real happy that could, and to think that there were 7 people that exited. Now, one thing I did want to ask you, we've had some pretty interesting people on the show. A couple weeks ago, we had Jeff, who is a cameraman for Major League Baseball. But I think firefighters are just as interesting. And, just to change the subject for a minute, the clothes I'm wearing and the chair I'm sitting in a fire, those are pretty hazardous chemicals often. Can you just tell us a little bit about your career in firefighting?
Yeah, the career in firefighting was exciting. It was rewarding. It was wonderful. I encourage anybody who's even remotely interested to go forward and check it out. You'll be glad you did. But part of the firefighting duties are all the hazards involved. And that includes the extreme amount of toxic chemicals. And come to find out that the firefighting gear we were issued was made flame resistive, flame retardant. Anything will burn eventually, but the gear was specially chemical dipped in the clothing, the manufacturing process to help resist fire, to protect us, which is good. But now, all these years later, come to find out those chemicals have carcinogens in them, which are now exposing the firefighters wearing them to possibly getting bad effects later on in career. It could be devastating. So now there's all firefighters across the United States to fill out a form detailing your entire career being exposed to all types of fires, car fires, wildland fires, structure fires, what have you, and the types of possible carcinogens you were exposed to. And lo and behold, it turns out part of the carcinogens we were exposed to were the very clothes that we were issued to protect us. And we had no idea that that was part of the manufacturing process. So yes, I did fill out that form, and I think all firefighters should, because they want to keep a record of this. They want to research history to see where this trend is going. And we're hoping this doesn't turn out to be a horrible bad thing in the long run, but you never know. This is something that needs to be addressed and researched.
And again, I don't know if the first responders would have had the outcome they had without Jon Stewart lobbying in Washington, D.C. on behalf of those first responders. So
Jon Stewart's amazing. I have nothing but respect for him. What he did for those first responders, I cannot salute him enough for. He's a genuine, empathetical human being. He's gracious. He's polite. He's respectful. But what he's done for the first responders, I just can't say enough. And you are right, Irene. It would be really fantastic if you could get him on the podcast.
oh my gosh, and maybe you could, here I am luring you into TARTA to be a volunteer. Why don't we reach out to Jon Stewart together about the harm that this is causing the military, and not just the military. You have a lot of veterans keep their security clearances after they separate from service because they work in military related careers. And you have people that work for defense contractors, and when you're people that are battling the Veterans Administration, when you have to battle a timeshare on top of all of that, it's not easy. It's just not easy. So thank you for your service. And were you deployed as a Marine, or did you remain in the U.S.?
I was sent to various training bases throughout the United States, from Memphis, Tennessee to Wichita Falls, Texas, to El Toro, California, to Okinawa, Japan, and back and forth. And it was a wonderful experience. I think everybody should experience a foreign country and their cultures at least 2 weeks out of their life, if they could, if not longer. And another thing you had mentioned earlier in the show was Elizabeth Warren. She happens to be my senator. I've met her personally a few times, and I believe that she's a big fan of first responders.
Oh,
And
yes, she
once you get
is.
a fire going with her, she won't stop, and she's terrific. So getting her involved in this, I think, would also be a wonderful direction to go in.
Well, if
That
you
would be
know her,
great.
maybe you can introduce her to this. I'm a big advocate for first responders, and had a patented invention that we were providing for domestic violence, and to help enforce protective orders. It was several years ago, and we ran into some struggles and challenges, but the patent's still there. The product can still be used. It was one of the best built, I was told, by police officers who tested it. And then I had firefighters that was interested in it, because we could track things in buildings. Like, so you could do take any building architect drawing from anywhere and
Yes.
put it into our system instantly, and a firefighters would be monitored, and you could respond to them by, voice telling them, if you feel like they're lost, go this way, because you can see exactly where they are.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, it was pretty intense development, but I had to step back for a while after my husband died. So
So sorry
yeah, it
about
was. Thank you. But it was, I am a big supporter of first responders. I don't think you guys get enough respect for all the work that you do. I don't think people truly, when you say someone needs to go out of the country 2 weeks to, at least once in their life, I think people need to live your life for 2 weeks in the first responder world to truly understand and respect what you go through.
Your invention that you mentioned reminds me of a terrible tragedy years ago in Worcester, Massachusetts, where 6 firefighters from one department tragically perished in an industrial complex for cold storage. And the building is all made of cork walls. There are no lights. I'm sorry, there are no windows, rather. And it's very easy to get lost in a structure like that. And maybe a device like yours could have helped the first responders outside with an architectural blueprint of the building help the first responders inside get out.
Yeah, I mean, that was the key. Was we were able to take any of the drawings and just pipe them into our system instantaneously and immediately see the tracking devices wherever they were. We use these on oil rigs. That became a need after 5 men were trapped in the doghouse and perished when a rig went. And they couldn't get to them because they had no idea where they went. They couldn't get to the mustard zone. See, I've learned and researched so much about all of these kind of situations. It all began because of domestic violence. My journey began because of that. And then it just blossomed into all of this. But when I saw what firefighters went through and the journey that you go through and how you could be blind or trapped, I saw where this was a tool that could be used. Maybe I can get back into it again and get this launched again. But right now, I like winning some of these things, a little at a time, right?
And since you bring it up and we have Eric here, Kim, I just want to interject that the reason I do this is when I was 24 years old, about 150 years ago, my first husband had a devastating disease. I wouldn't wish on anyone Wilson's disease. It was like having Alzheimer's and hepatitis at age 24 at the same time, a degeneration of the brain and liver. And in the middle of that, I got a call from my girlfriend, my best friend, and her 2-year-old, that her husband had hurt her, and they put him in jail for 30 days. And the sheriff said, you should live somewhere else. And she lived with me for the last 2 months of her life in fear. And he did murder her in front of her 2-year-old, shot her in the face 3 times, not in front of me, but I was to testify premeditation. And the John Moore changed his plea to guilty, and the judge sentenced him to 7 years. So way back then, that's when I became a victim's advocate, and I consider this very much a timeshare ministry. It's the heartache and the despair that you hear in these calls for a product that's supposed to bring joy and fun and relaxation to our life. And it doesn't have to be that way. My husband and I have owned 4 timeshares. We're down to 1. And we had a great time until there was something happened where we couldn't, reading the contract wouldn't have helped us. But we really appreciate your being on the show. I hadn't put together Massachusetts and Elizabeth Warren and the firefighters and John Stewart. So those are some good avenues that I think that Eric, it'd be great to stay in touch with you and see what we can do to pursue those resources.
Oh, absolutely. My wife and I intend to keep in touch with you consistently. And
Thank
Kimberly,
you.
I would like to get with you guys for John Stewart, and maybe we can get hold of Elizabeth Warren. And before I leave today, I just want to bring up one other thing. You had mentioned to me earlier, Irene, that at our age, we're retired, and if they won't live out of our timeshares, in a way, if you think about it, that's a systematic form of elderly abuse.
It is.
Absolutely is. And what the attorney on our show, FTC, talks about unfair and deceptive practices. We talk a lot about unfair. We need to, deceptive. We need to look at unfair. It's very unfair. So, hey, it looks like we're almost out
Nothing
of
should
time.
lock you in beyond death to begin with. But Elizabeth Warren is one who did advocate the consumer fair practice law. So maybe we can make a meetup with her on this. But there are so many solutions to this. But right now we have to put out the fires. And Irene has done so well in preventing people from having to go to the expense.
And our volunteers, and our volunteers.
Right. I'm sorry. Yes, I know. And all the volunteers that work so hard on this. You know, we can't do it without everyone's help. But, the exit companies charge a lot of money and sometimes don't get anywhere. And we have those horror stories too. But everyone, we are here every Monday. We are taking calls, taking questions, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We look forward to seeing you next Monday. Good stories, bad stories. We want to hear them all because timeshares aren't always bad. So please take care. Have a blessed, wonderful week. Stay wealthy and healthy.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. I'm trying to get it.